Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we touch on everything that went down at the Lions OTAs Week 2. We're going to make more sense of the rotating center spot, plus discuss the overall impact on Ragnow's retirement on the offensive line as a whole. We'll also set up the rest of the offseason and get ready for training camp and preseason to kick off next month. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Theo Riddick, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year and Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's the current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, one more Lions talk before we break for training camp. You ready for it?
Definitely. Training camp or the last show?
Both, I guess. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Good, ready for the last show, and then that little pause or break before training camp hits next month.
Yes, we're ready.
And we'll be getting there earlier because obviously that Hall of Fame game. We'll get into all of that. And helping us do that will be the Sports Writer of the Year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. That is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, thank you for taking time out of your busy baseball and softball schedule to join us for this.
No problem. Just trying to get over sunburn from baseball regionals yesterday.
Yeah, great weather, great sunshine. Happy to have that here in Michigan this time of year. Okay, guys, June OTAs are in the books, and there's a lot more to talk about than expected due to the Frank Ragnow news that broke. So let's start there. His retirement news literally broke the middle of our last show. And if you're someone who likes the unexpected video, you should go check out that show and watch as Coach Angers' son Duke walks up very unsuspectingly with a cell phone and then shows it to him off screen. And Coach, your picture is worth 1,000 words, wouldn't you say, James?
Yeah, the look on his face was it's priceless.
Yes.
So, yeah. Coach, what was going through your mind when that happened?
Wow. It's just one of those things where you know that when you get news and granted, it's just a grown human being retiring from a football team, but somebody you respect and love and know that he's probably one of the best. It was a shocker, especially when I was doing one of my favorite things in life, and that's talking Lions football with you guys.
For sure. Well, finally, Dan Campbell was able to shed some light on. He was asked about that at second week of OTAs. He dropped a few different nuggets. One, he said, Frank is obviously going to be sorely missed, but the train goes on. Next man up. Coach, that sounds like stuff we hear from you all the time. And Campbell said they're going to be ready to go when camp hits. They've got plenty of versatility up there. He also said this was never about the contract. And actually, surprisingly, somebody still asked him another contract or two question about this after Dan said that. And one thing was, would the Lions have worked with him if it was an issue? And he's like, I'm sure they would have, which I'm sure they would have as well. But it never seemed like it was a contract, even though there was a lot of speculation about it. Coach, it makes sense. People are like, well, it's only been 7 years. He's retiring early, but we talked about the toll it takes on the body. We talked about the Ironman award he basically had 2 years ago and how, 2 years ago we thought he was going to retire. So all those things kind of add up. And Coach Campbell said he respects them, and it's not an easy decision. So when they make that decision, you honor it. So what are some of your thoughts about Campbell's remarks there?
Well, when Campbell broke up, when he kind of he got choked up, you knew what Rags. And that again, we keep emphasizing that's what Dan Campbell's all about. It's family. He's a brother. He was there. He's probably one of the first guys that met Dan Campbell and what he's gone through and endured through his career with the Lions, with the toe and the throat and the whoever. There's so many things that guy. And it's a captain and it's a leader, and it's tough to rebound. Can you replace him? Absolutely not. It's going to be a committee. It's going to be a team. The offensive line is going to step forward. That Sewell guy, he's been around forever. He must be 30 years old. Oh, that's right. He's what, 24, 25. But, him and Decker and Glasgow and those guys are, they're going to have to, each of them are going to have to take a little piece of what we're losing with Rags and try to, try to put it together and make sure that line's as good, as good as it was, or if not better with the young guys.
All right. Well, James, Coach Campbell added saying he's acknowledging it's going to be different without Frank in the picture. He said we need growth and development quickly, and they've got some young guys for that. He also said that's why they're thankful to have Hank as their offensive line coach, and they're very thankful that Glasgow has as much versatility as he does. What do you make of those statements?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because at one point Ragnow supposedly told Hank Fraley that, he wouldn't play for anyone else or something like that. So, when Fraley was kind of a free agent last year, so I wonder if that was maybe a hint that he was already contemplating retirement, and we just totally missed that. Uh, as people who were in the following the Lions pretty closely and everything. It does leave just three players from pre-Brad Holmes on the roster with Ragnow retiring. Taylor Decker,
Yep.
Jack Fox, and
Oh,
the third one would be Tom Kennedy.
I was gonna say.
wow. A nice pull on that Tom Kennedy.
I mean, the other one, there's other ones that are sort of that were on the Lions and then went elsewhere and came back, like Glasgow, Skipper, and Pittman. But those are the only three that Holmes inherited and kept.
Makes sense. And you talk about missing things. I mean, the first week of OTAs, rotating so many people in at center now makes sense, and we understand why they did that because they're trying to get a feel for things. And Coach, he said you need experience in there somewhere, and he was talking about the offensive line and where Graham might play. Now, when we first brought this up, ESPN updated that depth chart pretty quickly and put Glasgow in at center right away with Mahogany at left guard and Ratledge at right guard. And we talked about having the veterans, spaced out with the young guys in between, and that might be the way things open up. But, Coach Campbell said we're going to find out a lot during training camp who's going to fill these positions. And so it seems like it's still a puzzle being put together yet. We don't know how it's going to totally fit. Do you think it's still pretty open?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have some ideas they're looking at. I mean, look at the one O-line group they had. I don't know if you guys saw it in practice. Sewell was out, Decker was out, Glasgow was out, and Rags was, of course, he retired. And they had Manu at left tackle, Mahogany at left guard, Rutledge at center. Kyoto also played some right guard, and then Dan Skipper at right tackle. So I think one of the things is they're looking at that depth piece. They probably believe and know that, and for me as a coaching standpoint, hey, Glasgow can step in at center at any time. Let's get the young kid and see if he can step in there. Then you put your right side together with veterans. You got a good left tackle, and then you have your two guys, the two younger guys in there. So Glasgow can help make the calls, from the guard spot. People have done that before, and so I think that's what they're doing. And of course, if he comes along and does what he does, Ratledge, it's going to be huge for us, because he can take that spot. He's already locked into it. Glasgow plays his best position. And again, we've heard this over the years when guys have hurt and said, "Oh, we're going to take this guy and move him here because this guy's hurt." Well, you never want to change two for one. And in this case, you're only changing one. With Mahogany taking the left side and Glasgow staying on the right guard, and Rutledge at center. So I think that's their thought process. That's what Again, I'm not at that level. I was never at that level, but coaching wise, it makes a lot of sense. Again, because Glasgow could pop into the center spot at any given time.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense, or it does make sense to space them out and have the experience there. But if you can have Glasgow playing his strongest spot, and if his playing right guard is just as good or better than somebody else at right guard, you move them over to the other spot. The training camp is going to be so interesting on the offensive line, James. What are you looking for, and what do you think about the potential pieces getting put together?
Yeah, kind of reading between the lines with Dan Campbell, it seemed like they kind of want Ratledge to win the center spot. and to keep Glasgow at guard. And then that's what they're kind of hoping happens. But they're prepared for if it doesn't. Glasgow can always play center and Ratledge could play guard, or Frazier maybe plays guard if Ratledge isn't ready. But I think that he's probably going to be starting this year pretty soon. But it just seems like from what Campbell said, that their best case scenario is Ratledge at center and putting Glasgow at his best position of right guard.
All right. Well, one of the talks was, are the Lions going to bring somebody in, right? What's going to happen with that? Well, they already have. They brought in Tristan Colon, undrafted rookie in 2020, but he's been in the league for 5 years, James. You did a little more deep dive on him. What did you see about him? He's played center. He's played guard. What did you find out about him?
Yeah, he's played 51 games in the NFL. A decent number of those are games where he just came in and played special teams. But he has that background as well, so that's something that helps. He's had 15 starts in the NFL. He started 7 games for the Cardinals last year, 5 of those at center and 2 at right guard. He did not play aside from special teams against the Lions last year, so I'm kind of wondering how they saw him as somebody that they were interested in. But he had a very good PFF grade as far as how the Cardinals go last year. He was their sixth best offensive player. Particularly had a really good run blocking grade of 81, and a pretty decent pass blocking grade as well. So things look pretty decent there for him to be somebody who's a good insurance plan, if nothing else.
Yeah, and coach, this isn't a guy that's going to like scream headlines or anything like that, but this just seems like the type of pick up that the Lions really needed to make, which is you're bringing a guy who has experience in the NFL. He's been around, and he seems to be at least a depth piece who might push for like the number 2 spot in one of the positions, whether it's center or guard. But it just gives you another veteran presence to, I guess, just increase the chances of having depth of competition to see what's going to win out this summer.
Oh, for sure. And, James already alluded to, he's got some of that. And you also, he's got some time in the league and he's been around. So he's doing something right because he's been around, and I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing too is, maybe our scheme fits him better than the schemes he was in prior to this. I mean, those are, we're a run blocking force, well, maybe we like to double team more. Maybe he's better off when he's got a double team guy, maybe show some athleticism, maybe, and so, there's a reason they grabbed him and, other people don't. And, a lot of times you find these diamonds in the rough and, the Lions have been pretty good at finding those. So hopefully this is another one. And if not, he's there to help with our rookies. And we just had another depth piece, a guy that we're not concerned with putting on the field in critical situations.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I like the move. I like the increased depth. And so we'll see how it works out. It's going to be quite the training camp battle with a number of guys, many new and many returning on the offensive line. So let's look at the bigger picture of this. How does or could this affect what many consider as the strength of the team? And again, we don't know how it actually does. We won't know how it will until, the season plays out. But the O-line, it makes it more of a question, right? I mean, we thought it would be the strength, especially when we thought the only person leaving was going to be Zeitler. We had Mahogany coming in. We drafted Ratledge. We drafted Frazier. We liked a lot of the other depth pieces. But now, is it kind of like a wait and see, James? What are your thoughts on this being the strength that it can be?
I mean, Ratledge is a high pick, so, they're not, Ragnow is a first round pick. Ratledge is a second round pick. If Ratledge lives up to what he's supposed to be, I don't know that they take a giant hit here. He's supposed to be the same kind of guy who has the good cerebral vision for the NFL, but also is a mauler. And has a good personality and hard worker, all those kind of things, a lot of the same things that you saw in Frank Ragnow. So if things work out, I think it could be that they don't skip a beat. It explains a lot more why they drafted 2 guards that both had a little bit of experience playing center here or there. In the draft, and maybe that was one of the things where they were like, well, or maybe that was one of Ragnow's things is, okay, they have some people in place now, and I'm not going to totally screw over the team if I retire.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of alluded to that timing before, right? Like, obviously, Campbell was asked if they knew about it, and Skipper was too. And Skipper's like, I knew about it before it hit Instagram. Like, they didn't find out on Instagram. Now, how far in advance he knew, he didn't really allude to that, but I'm sure the Lions organization knew that, he was contemplating it a year ago. So they planned for the contingency of it potentially happening, Coach. And so it was expected to be the strength. They said, we need to keep this a strength. They brought a lot of resources in, but a lot of it's youthful. How does this affect things? Can they get up to speed as quickly as a lot of people would hope they would, and do they need to?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't fear it at all. First of all, I think we got a great coaching staff. I shouldn't say I don't fear it because, oh my God, Rags is gone. But, then you're gonna go to schemes. You're gonna go to different things. Here's the thing is 12 personnel, 13 personnel, bigger tight ends, blocking tight ends. You bring an extra guy in. If there's a great edge rusher, you chip him. If there's a center or a guard that can't block as well, then what do? You scheme them and you double team, and you chip with the double team, or you leave with the back with the double team. Lions are going to fit it right. You still got the best tackle on the right side and one of the best tackles on the left side. So you squeeze it down a little bit. So I'm not, yeah, again, it'd be nice to have him because as Campbell talked about the block and play against Tampa Bay when he hit the big fella, he bent him. He was down on one knee. He still got up and pressed him. And we got Rutledge is going to do that. He's probably not going to do it as well. But he's going to be a grinder. He's going to be a gamer. He's going to do everything he has to do to make a block. And the offensive guys will put them in position to be successful. So, I read instantly. We had the best offensive line in the league. Now we have the worst. So one guy because he's the one we go 1-5 all the time. So, wait and see, but fear none, not with the talent we have offensively. And we run, we pass, we can run, we can pass, we can do whatever we want, and we'll scheme people to death. And good luck stopping us.
Well, James, Coach went right into the next one, which is how does this impact the offense, the team overall? And I think Coach hit on it, scheming some things differently, right? We'll make some adjustments, whether it is you're changing the personnel, you're bringing in an extra tight end. Maybe they bring in a fullback. I don't know. Probably not. But the thing is, they will look at everything and see what do we need to do. I do think it takes one more percentage chance of decreasing the chance that we actually institute the tush push this year, guys. I don't think it's going to happen. And it probably wasn't going to happen with Jared Goff anyway, but not with a young offensive line. And if you didn't pick up on my sarcasm right there, folks, total sarcasm. But James, how might you think this might impact the offense at all?
I don't know that it's going to change a whole lot of things. I mean, like Jerry alluded to, you will always be tweaking some things just because of personnel, because of changes in coaching, changes in the opposition. You're always going to be changing some things. But I mean, you've already got a quarterback in Jared Goff who can read a defense quickly and get the ball out. So I don't see this being a major thing. I think Ratledge is going to be somebody who can step in there and do a pretty good job right away, based on his pedigree and all the scouting reports I've read on him. He's somebody, worst case, he's going to start at guard and Graham at center. I think we're all fine with that. So, I don't see it making a giant change in this offense, really. You may see the tight ends stay in maybe a little bit more. If those guys do need some extra chips or double teams, that kind of thing. But I mean, we saw the tight ends block quite a bit last year too. So, and the Lions, another thing on the Lions knowing this was coming is that they had this Tristan Colon signing ready to go. I mean, they signed him the next day after this was announced. And I wonder if maybe, Roy Lopez is a former teammate of his, is if he was like, hey, I know a guy who's a free agent who plays that position.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They were prepared. This was not something, and it happened at a great time for it happening because they drafted in the chance that it could happen. And then having it happen as soon as it did, it's going to mean a lot of reps for these guys. And we'll get into that as well. But they have a lot of time to sort things out and the coaches to analyze practice film and even preseason film. So, Coach, let's start with you on this one. Does this take attention away from the defensive line, like the edge, like everybody's talking about? Oh, we need Zadarius Smith or another defensive end. I mean, I've said I'd like to see him there just for the excess, right? Build that depth up as high as you can. But with the change on offensive line, I mean, so what are we looking at? Well, we have more, as James pointed out in the last show, we've got more salary cap space because of Ragnow's contract being gone. But we also know the Lions are not in a good salary cap spot next year. And so does this do anything to the defensive line aspect of, hey, we really need to get another defensive lineman in here, or we need to save money in case we need to go after offensive line? I personally think the Lions are kind of happy with everybody that's in the building, and I don't really think it changes the calculus, but I want to get your guys' points of view.
Yeah, I don't think it changes much in the building either. I think they still have excuse me, they still have the way they're going to attack practice. They still have the way they're going to go through the preseason. They still have the guys, the defensive guys that they're happy with. They've nonstop talked about how happy they were with the defense line and how loaded that room was. They still have guys coming back off injury that will help that defense line as the season goes on. And so I think that the biggest thing they were looking at this year, and we talked about, is the depth pieces, whether it's the offensive line or defensive line or corners. And we've filled all those holes. Even though we've lost Rag, we just filled a hole with another depth piece by signing him. Yes. And so I think that's the thing is you look at, I still think they have, I still think they have an idea that they may, but the Davenport, knock on wood, and I'm going to knock on wood, the Davenport things I'm reading, you guys, is just tenfold. I mean, he looks better shape. He's twitchy. Everything he's doing, it's like he said to himself, I'm not, knock on wood, knock on wood, I'm not going to get injured this year. And I'm going to put my body in the best possible position and shape that I can be in. And I just think he did. I think he's tired of hearing the negativity. That grows on you. The voices are in there. And I think he's out to prove everybody wrong. And I'm going to back that one. So I don't think it adjusts anything. Practice, something happens in preseason, things like that, you may see something, but I think they're set.
Man, I would love nothing more than Davenport to have a Levi Onwuzurike comeback type year, right? Because everybody counted Levi out. They thought he was done. And if Davenport can do that, then watch out. And again, that's a big if. I get that, but we'll have to see about that. James, your thoughts? Any change on the calculus for defensive end or going after one and getting someone like Zadarius, or saving the money for next year or for something else that might be unforeseen?
I think they could do a little bit of both. I mean, their cap savings this year is $9.1 million. That's what Ragnow's base salary was. So they're still going to be paying $1.2 million of his prorated bonus and I think $3.6 million of his option. But they're going to save that $9 million in base salary. So they could take a little bit of that and add it to sweeten the pot a little bit for Zadarius, get him in the building. I could totally see that happening, but I don't see them doing a whole lot with it. I think Brad Holmes more likely is going to pocket most of this and roll it over to next year when the cap is really going to be tight on them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, you just get one more depth piece in, because that's the thing. It's not always about having all the all-stars. We have so many all-stars. We're spoiled beyond belief. But you can't have an all-star at every single position. But what we did have at almost every single position was so much depth. And I mean, and duct tape. Between those two things, we got through everything last year and had an incredible season despite a historic number of injuries. And so that's the big thing, is not having a huge drop-off. Because for many years it was like, well, if one guy goes down, there's nothing behind them. And so that's where I think they're going to focus, like you said, James, is if you can bring a depth piece in, that's fine, but don't expect any big names or big things happening. I mean, I would consider Zadarius Smith a big name and a big thing, but don't expect those really big ones like everybody always calls for.
I would too. Yeah. The people who ever reacted and said, "Oh, well, now we have another $9 million to throw at Trey Hendrickson."
It's still not enough.
I'm just like, it's not going to happen, people. Not going to happen.
All right. Well, let's move on to the preseason. Let's talk about that. It's something that a lot of people lament, and people are like, "Oh, it's preseason. It doesn't matter." Lions have 4 preseason games this year, right? It's been down to 3 since they went to the 17-game schedule, but because they got the Hall of Fame game. This could actually benefit the Lions, though. I mean, we know they've got some joint practices, and that's the coaches love that because they get a lot of information out of that. They get to do, situational drills against another team. But this could be really big for some guys who really need some reps. I start with Hendon Hooker, right? Mm-hmm. That's a guy that nobody just really knows that much about. There's speculation about him, but he got injured in preseason last year. We've hardly seen that guy. Mm-hmm. And so there's a guy who just needs some live game reps. And Kobe Sorsdahl, Broderick Martin, those are some guys that jump out to me. And then in addition to that, obviously you're probably not going to have Glasgow and Sewell and Decker out there, but it also could be good for the offensive line too, James. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this fourth preseason game? The Lions having an extra one this year.
Yeah, I think, they're not going to play the veterans very much. But I think, the young guys, the guys who need to either step up to make the team or need to improve to maybe to try to win a starting job, it's going to be pretty important for them. Guys like Rakestraw, Vaki, you mentioned Sorsdahl already, Awashikwa to maybe keep a spot on the team. Manu to show that he's getting better, Broderick to maybe make a statement to say that, hey, I belong on this team, and just some developmental guys like Lauren Strickland, Morris Norris, some guys like that who are kind of on the fringe now of the roster a little bit. And they're going to have to prove something to make the team. Otherwise, I think that the veterans are going to kind of get kid gloves, and really they're hardly going to play at all in the preseason, except for some of the new guys, maybe, like Yeboah, Lopez, Stewart, Maddox, and Yassine, because just to get them acclimated, they'll probably play a bit, but I wouldn't think that they'll play a starter's share of snaps in the preseason.
Yeah, just get them a feel for the system, learning the scheme, so then they have stuff on tape that's real, right, Coach? It's not just practice tape. And those young guys, I mean, when the season starts, they don't get the reps because they're so focused on stuff. So do you kind of agree that this really could be more valuable than people think for these young guys, and or some of these guys who have been on the team for a couple of years but haven't quite developed into what maybe they hope they would at this point?
Yeah, baptism by fire. And it's very, very beneficial. I mean, it's again, you get that extra one. Now you're, if 3, we can do this. Now you have 4 and say, hey, we're going to push this guy. We're going to push this guy. Maybe Ratledge has to go all 4 games. All 4 preseasons. Maybe some of those other guys like you talked to. AH is a DN, man. I can't wait to see them turn him loose in that. And plus those guys the chances are with this now is those guys are going to get some reps against other teams' ones, because a lot of the other teams like to play their ones for that first series or second series, and now they have tape. Eye in the sky, don't lie. And I think it's funny how things seem to be balancing out in our favor. I mean, I'm just saying, I think the staff is looking at that and saying, man, this is into our favor this year, where a lot of teams would be like, oh my God, I don't want to do another one of those. But so I'm looking forward to that. I think you guys are right. I think we're going to have all those young guys getting those shots, those second year guys getting, those third year guys. And that's going to determine, because is Martin, can he play in this league? Well, he's going to get a lot of reps. And he better perform, because the defensive line is pretty deep, and or he'll stay around till we get a couple off IR, and then it'll be over with. So,
well, Coach, let me touch on another thing with preseason. The Lions have a new offensive and defensive coordinator, and obviously they're not going to call everything that they're going to want to show during the regular season, but can this be beneficial for them to get a feel on the flow of the game with Coach Campbell? And is this a thing that they can learn from that will help them benefit week 1 and week 2 right away?
Well, we talked about it earlier too. The thing is, when you're talking scheme wise, they're going to have to figure out exactly. I'm sure NFL teams have these massive playbooks. I mean, everybody, you're going to the year and you're going, okay, we're going to be able to do this, we're going to be able to do that. But oh my God, Rags is gone now. We're not going to be able to single cover. We're going to have to double team now against 9 teams, because their nose tackle is unbelievable. And so those are the things that are going to do. And it is these guys, well, Shepard's not a new coordinator. He's been there. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking AG and him. So that's why the defense is always ahead of the offense anyways. But so he's going to be okay. He knows most of these guys, other than the rookies. Now, Morton and Shaw and the new offensive guys, yeah, they're going to have to figure some things out. And there's going to be somebody that they like better than maybe the original guy, maybe than Johnson and them liked. And say, man, he does our scheme a lot better than what Johnson had him doing or whatever. So, but again, it's all going to fit into what Dan Campbell wants, and he's going to have the last say. But it'll be beneficial for everybody, I think, as long as we stay healthy. It's gonna work in our favor, I believe.
Yeah, because Morton was there and knew some of the guys originally,
Yes.
but of course, guys have come since. And then you're right, David Shaw. That's an outside perspective that brings something new. And so, James, Coach Campbell was asked who has stood out so far. And it's kind of crazy to say that Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams have looked like they might be ready for taking another step up because they both took such a step up last year from the year before. But what are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, if you're an NFC North defensive coordinator and you heard that sound bite, you probably had a reaction to that to be
Yeah.
to be PC. I mean, those two being better than they've been the last year or so is just scary.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamison Williams was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Jahmyr Gibbs has just been astronomical the last two seasons. So for them to get even better is, yeah.
Yeah.
The defensive coordinators are probably buying some extra depends.
Well, I like the video clip they showed of Rakestraw guarding JMO. And the reason Rakestraw actually did a pretty decent job. But the reason I liked it is Rakestraw is now number 9 and JMO's number 1. And it was like JMO ran past his old self into his new self with that video clip. And a lot of things are expected out of Rakestraw this year, but JMO, man, if he did add that 5 pounds of muscle and he is able to cut quicker and be stronger, the sky is legit the limit for this guy with that speed. Amon-Ra St. Brown was asked about a player to watch. He said Sam Laporta. He thinks he's a baller. He thinks he's in for some good things. And Coach Campbell also said Laporta's had a good spring and that he's looking at Enos Rakestraw as another guy who might be stepping up and looking at some good things. Coach, what are your thoughts on some of those comments from Coach Campbell?
Well, it's good to hear. It's funny. I watch a lot of the player stuff and listen to what they talk about. And Amik Robertson was talking about Rakestraw and talking about his boys, talking about TA taking a step up, and Reed, of course, is and he was kind of making fun of Carlton Davison, call him Big Money Carlton. I guess they still talk. So, but I think that the coaches, they're the ones evaluating, they're the ones that are putting it on. But when your teammates are talking about you or noticing you or seeing you do things, that's huge. And because they know what you're doing in the off season, pretty much. I mean, those guys know, the coaches don't, there's not as much talk, but they know how hard they're working and what they're doing, behind the scenes when they're not in OTAs and stuff. And when you come into an OTA and you perform at a high level like that, the rest of your teammates look at him and go, that dude's been working like a dog on him by himself, or with somebody training him. So, and it seems like, listen to what Campbell says, listen to what the players say. It seems like that the team has always been tight and always been unbelievable, but now it just seems they feel like, just listen to those guys, it feels like they're getting stronger and stronger as a unit. And when you get into camp and the guy next to you worked as hard as you did or maybe outworked you, it's going to push you in camp. So again, excited about what I've heard from everybody.
Yeah, and something St. Brown said, which was interesting, which is, when there's new things to learn, it almost requires you to focus a little bit more. And so therefore that can help elevate you to that next level. As a teacher, I talk about reflecting. If you don't pause and reflect and you just keep going through stuff, you're fine to a degree. But when you pause to reflect, that's when you truly grow. And so having to take that extra time to slow down and look through this, there might be something that, that light bulb goes on. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. Look at this. And that one little thing can lead to 2 or 3 different things. And so, yeah, that an extra moment of taking to look at that and consider that could be a difference maker as well. Adding the new wrinkles so that, it doesn't get stale. I also liked how Campbell said they want to see how many situations they can get guys in isolation. He goes, they have these top offensive players out there to succeed. Well, they're going to figure out, okay, you're going to take this guy or that guy away. Well, what if we get this guy in isolation? What can that look like? James, the offensive line is going to be a work in progress, but all these other positions are known quantities. And so, and they're all guys who are growing. All of them should arguably or could arguably do even better than last year, which you kind of alluded to the comments on the NFC North defensive coordinator is probably not thrilled about that, but it gives you extra hope, right?
Yeah, a lot of these guys, I don't know that they'll do a lot better statistically than last year, maybe.
Right.
But you can still be better. You can, if you can go backwards from 1,200 to 1,100 yards and still be a better player. If you're running your routes better, if you're blocking better, if you're doing all the other things, or you're healthier. So you can get better without getting statistically better, and I think that that's something that you can see a lot of these players doing. I mean, Sam Laporta took a step back statistically last year, but I think he was still a factor in all those games. Teams had to be on the look for him coming across the middle. So, and they've got so many weapons now. It's an embarrassment of riches for that offensive coordinator and then the whole offensive staff. They even have a guy like Vaki sitting on the bench who was a highlight reel in college when he played running back. So the offense, I'm not too worried about the offense at all, really. And frankly, I'm not even really worried too much about the defense either. They build up so much depth there, and it has to be better than last season as from a health perspective. So I'm pretty happy where they're at on both sides of the ball right now.
Well, I think you're speaking coach's language when you say the stats might not be better, but they can be better because we talked about that. We're not going to drool over these stats again this year. We got all that drooling out last year, and we just want to win football games. And that's exactly it. They hit some milestone numbers last year. Maybe they're going to grind a few more out. We know they played more opponents with winning records who are expected to be, teams competing for the playoff spots. So it's going to be a tough schedule, but it doesn't mean they can't win games. And it might not be by the same margins at times, but that doesn't mean they're not better. And you can be better and have fewer wins as a team as well. You started alluding to the defense. Let's jump over there. Coach Campbell said the addition of DJ Reed and Avonte Maddox look good. It looks like they're going to fit in. I believe those were Campbell's words. And talking about they're going to have Rakestraw more on the outside, and they have a number of guys who can fill in at nickel, Coach. So, James isn't worried about the defense. And we got some guys we'll talk about that are coming back from injury a little bit later. But that secondary shaping up to look pretty strong.
Yeah, I think, I was listening to Reed talking too about, or maybe read some comments on him that they want to be the best defensive pass coverage team in the league, which they got a shot, And the thing about Reed, I'm really looking forward. Amic's interview was just enlightened me on how much more I like that guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Love that guy. I mean, he's just, I want to bring one point when they asked him about the injuries and he said, injuries play a part of it. I'm not going to talk bad about, we brought some dudes in that could play. I mean, he never says anything, right? Just the way he handled everything he was saying about everybody he's playing with and how upset he was when he got injured and he was ready to prove everybody wrong again after the week before that. But Reed, Reed comes from the Jets. Reed plays man-to-man coverage. Reed is going to be, I was reading up next gen stats. His tight throwing window was 37.3% percentage, which was the fourth highest rate among cornerbacks. And he also posted an 18% forced incompletion rate, which was 10th out of 127 qualified quarterbacks. So you got a guy 10th out of 127 just walked into our house. Are you kidding me? And then you got, man, if we get a couple safeties behind him, how good is he going to be? I mean, so and then you put a Meek, and Reed says a Meek's the best slot corner, the guy there is, and then a Meek and both these guys, all they're talking about is Rickstraw, who could take one of their spots. I mean, I'm excited, as you can see. Just that it's going to be fun with that group, and again, they're bragging about Rickstraw, who's could be in a position to take one of their spots, and I don't think either one of those guys would be upset about it. They'll just work a lot harder to be better. So I'm really looking forward to this. And of course, they all said TA. Everybody says TA is taking a step forward, which you always do in your sophomore year, you hope. So
Yeah, I love that interview by Amik Robertson
yeah.
because, like you said, that part where it's like those guys that came in and helped us, that they
Mhm.
helped us, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus because they have some ability, they have some qualities, and that speaks to the character of somebody, and
Yeah.
I like that, and you value everybody. So,
Mhm.
James, you got some thoughts here on the secondary though as well.
Again, one thing I can say with some certainty is that Jerry's a huge fan of PFF rankings, especially their safety rankings.
Oh,
Uh,
oh, don't get me going.
Go ahead.
PFF has DJ Reed ranked as the sixth best corner in the NFL. They came out with their
Wow.
rankings for this upcoming season. They have Carlton Davis as 11, and the Lions got DJ Reed somehow cheaper
Yeah.
by a little bit than Carlton Davis when he went to he went to the Patriots, I think, right?
Yep.
Uh, and I think people are not making a big enough deal about that signing
No.
of DJ Reed. The guy's got a chip on his shoulder, because he was never considered the number one guy even in the Jets because he's got Sauce Gardner. He came cheaper than Carlton Davis. He's younger, and he's pretty steadily been healthier throughout his career than Carlton Davis too. So. I think that this is a huge signing for that defense, and Avonte Maddox is a nice veteran guy who can do a bit of everything in the secondary that gives them a second Brian Branch sort of.
Mhm.
All right. Yeah. The secondary is going to turn into a strength, we hope. And we're looking forward to see what that brings together and how those pieces fit. But multiple people out there not practicing. We know that. St. Brown not practicing. He actually, in his the media session, mentioned he had surgery on his knee to clean some stuff up, but he should be good to go for training camp. I was at his kids' youth camp. He was running around playing quarterback with the kids. Obviously, he's not contacting anybody or going full speed or anything, but moving a heck of a lot better than I am, which you would obviously hope and expect because he's a pro athlete and much younger than me. But yeah, I'm just going back to the overcautious thing, right? David Montgomery did not practice. He was out moving great at his youth camp. Again, overly cautious with all these players because they want them to be as healthy as possible once they hit training camp, which is going to start a little early this year because of the Hall of Fame game. But that's just good news. But James, Campbell did drop some not so good news. We know Lee McNeil's not starting the season anytime soon. It's going to be the second half, but he let out some other stuff you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, Malcolm Rodriguez is going to be out until November. So that's a hit for the linebacking core. But we kind of figured that he wasn't going to be ready for the start of the season. I didn't think it was going to be November. I thought maybe he'd be back like October or something. Um, I mean, he did tear his ACL, but I think it was in the Thanksgiving game last year. So, that puts it about 12 months. Usually, I think nowadays the ACL return date is faster than 12 months now, more like nine-ish, or something. But it could also depended on when he was able to get his surgery, other benchmarks that he's hit in his rehab and stuff. So, but not having him till November is going to be a big hit. But they brought in Grant Stewart, who is pretty much a carbon copy of Rodrigo. A guy who you can just put in there in the box and he will, find ball carrier, get ball carrier, and can play special teams really well and do a lot of things for you. So I think they got that replacement in there, and then the second half of the season when they have both of them, they're going to be in a good position.
Yeah, and coach, we know they don't want to rush players back, and it seems like they did the right moves to make sure that they don't put anybody in a situation, whether it's the team or the player, that they feel like they have to. And, you know, Malcolm will have all that time to not just rehab to full strength, but then to rehab to hopefully football strength. So when he comes back, he's contributing right away versus working his way in longer than necessary, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think, like James said, the knee surgeries, the knee surgeries come back quicker, but they also, these guys play a sport that you need full body strength and every muscle locked in. And so I think that's the biggest thing with the Lions is they're going to make sure that there's no setbacks with any of these guys. And they got enough depth pieces they feel to get in there. I see a lot of people, oh my God, why is this guy not practicing? Or how come the second year guy's not in there? He needs these OTA reps. But they probably had him running around. And again, look at the numbers of the OTA guys. The guys that aren't practicing and aren't doing OTAs are still there. So that means they're learning. At least they're on site. They're still meeting their new teammates. They're still doing things like that. So, Saints, the one I was trying to talk about his injury. Week 7, I think it was against the Colts. He returned a punt. Remember, guys, and he came up limping on the sidelines. And I
Yeah.
told you, ooh, I didn't like that. Well, it's probably what they cleaned up. And he played 8, 9, 10, 11. I mean, on and on and on. So, I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I think they're overcautious. I think with that extra preseason game, like you guys said, are all reasons the Lions are saying we're going to hold him out, and that gives more reps to the guys they brought in that they don't know. So,
Yeah. Well, schedule analysis from Dan Campbell. He doesn't care. There, full stop, microphone drop. I love it. That's all we're going to talk about. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. He's like, I don't care. We got to play them. And we talked about this in our last show. Coach, you play the good team so that way you're battle tested and you don't have a false sense of greatness when the real games matter. Not that the regular season don't matter. It does. But that's when the second season gets here, and the second season matters. Preseason prep, we know the Lions are going to have joint practice with Miami and Houston, and that's big. Correct me if I'm wrong, James. The Lions did not have any joint practices last year. Is that correct? No, or was it one out in New York? They had one in the Giants, right?
I think they did one with the Giants. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
But this year
nothing
they've
at
got,
home.
they got Miami, they got Houston. So it's two teams that they're not playing this season, which is good because you don't get that. In these joint practices, you tend to get some animosity that carries over to the regular season if you play each other. So it's a good thing that they're not playing those teams this season.
Yeah, yep. And again, it's hard to get reps right now and get feel for coordinators for some of these guys who are lower on the depth chart. So that's going to happen in the preseason, and with those 4 games, that'll help them and those joint practices. A couple of things from Dan's presser the week before that we didn't get to, which is actually still really important, but the show went longer with Ragnow's retirement breaking. Something Campbell said that really jumped out to me. And he talked about postseason exits from the last 2 years. He said, every time you don't get as far as you want to, it opens your eyes a little bit more as to how precious it is to be at the postseason and how difficult it is. Coach, you've talked to your teams and your players before, and you've had those back-to-back season experiences. What does that say to you?
it is. It's again, you learn more from a loss. You learn more from being in a position. Here's the thing about the Lions last year, and because hey, we went 15-2. We kept getting these injuries, but we just kept winning. We just kept getting these injuries. We set more records, and we got another injury, and we set more records and kept winning. And then we go in and we beat Minnesota, at the end of the season to take number 1 seed. And that stuff just kind of builds on you in a positive way, but it also in a negative way because you kind of look around and you go, bring it. There's nothing you can do to us. We can do everything, which is good, but that learning thing, and Dan's right. He has so much bulletin board material to use in any given week with this huge schedule about, hey, remember the San Francisco game? Hey, remember the Commanders game? Remember when we did this and you guys didn't want to do that? Remember when you guys didn't practice hard? and it's karma. So I think it's huge, and he's right. And it's all these things. There's like Meek Robinson even said it. I'm going to bring him in again, where he said that the injury that he sustained in that game against the Commanders was disheartening because of what he wanted to prove. But then he took the spin and he said, "But I got to spend more time with my kids." And
Yeah.
that's what Dan Campbell's talking about. He's going to take all those things and spin them around in a positive, and eventually we're going to be hosting that Lombardi Trophy.
Well, another thing that Campbell said, and this was before the announcement for the Ragnow retirement, James, and this is maybe one of those things that we should have read a little closer. He said, it's important to make sure the young guys know that if we make it somewhere, how special it is and what we're going to do to move forward because we might not get another shot at it, James. And I think he's talking about some of those young guys who are going to be playing on the offensive line now, especially.
Yeah, it totally could be. And Dan Campbell he's always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead. He's developing his young position coaches to become coordinators eventually because he knows he's going to lose coordinators if they're successful. So he's got, you know, replacements in house, and he's doing the same thing with obviously with the player personnel, where he's constantly trying to churn and find better alternatives and options to be able to for whatever comes up, whether it's injuries, retirements, what have you, on the team. There's always going to be bumps in the road, and you've got to be able to navigate those bumps in the road.
Coach, have you ever had conversations like that with your players where you have a team that's, coming back, majority of the team's coming back, you have a shot at going far, but some young guys are going to have to play some key spots and you want them to realize, hey, this might be your one shot out of these next few years to get us this far, and you're going to play a vital role. We're going to need you to step up.
Yeah, that's it's easier at our level because we know when they're seniors, whether it's on the high school level or the college level, that this is it. This is their one shot. And I always used to let the seniors talk to the juniors and the sophomores and freshmen and say, when I was in your shoes, I did not work as hard. Or when I was in your shoes, I thought I was working hard. And now it's coming down to my last bit. So, and again, the Saints and the Sewells and the Gibbs and Laportas and the Goffs, they can play. They're the elite. They're the best. If they can get every person that's not on their level to raise their level of play, then things are going to be successful. And that's kind of the thing that we would talk about is, try to raise your level. And again, your biggest thing with that situation is the veterans or the older players, uh, having the younger players listen to the older players,
Yep.
understand, not fighting what the older players are saying. And let me go real quick because I'm going to tie that into our new cornerback who says he is asking more questions than he is answering. And I'm talking about Reed. He is asking more questions than he is answering, and he is the veteran. And he said the reason he's doing that is he was not here last year, and he wants to be on the same page as everybody else. That's right there is what tells you they're going to be developed because that's going to bring the younger guys up. And then again, he's going to turn into the veteran and say, hey, you can't do this when you're playing corner. But right now he's learning. So that's the conversation. Please raise your game and try to meet me. So,
Yeah, because you want what you're looking for them to do is maximize their year one potential.
yes.
They might not get to their year three potential in year one, but you want them to leave nothing unturned in year one because you might need every ounce of that effort to get to where you want to go. James, getting to go places, announcements happening. Something came out of Texas A&M. Well, you got something on that for us about that and Coach Campbell?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting that they had a thing set up where they brought Texas A&M's old strength and conditioning coach when Campbell was there, came up to Detroit and was going to do an interview with him, ostensibly just to reminisce about his time as an Aggie. And then they ended up just kind of ambushing him and surprising him with this award for a Lifetime Achievement Award at Texas A&M, and had a whole bunch of videos ready of teammates of his and other A&M greats and his head coach R.C. Slocum, telling him just little bits and pieces here and there and just welcome to the club and all this kind of stuff like that. And it was funny that Campbell's entire family was there and knew it was coming, but he didn't.
Those are the best. That's great when everybody
Yeah.
gets in on a surprise like that, when you get a recognition and stuff. So, cool. All right, well, timeline, upcoming schedule, folks. Mini camp June 10th to 12th, as you know, has been canceled. Training camp will be opening earlier than last year. The Chargers are reporting Wednesday, July 16th. That's who the Lions play in the Hall of Fame game. Last year, the Lions opened July 27th. So expect them to open, I don't know, a week or so earlier due to the fact that they're playing a week earlier. Lions have not officially announced anything yet. We'll be keeping our eye open for that because Hall of Fame game is July 31st. So we're going to be taking a little bit of break after this show until July likely. So keep an eye out for that. Get ready to preview training camp. Guys, any other final thoughts in their last words? James, you got something interesting that we should touch on before we get out of here?
Yeah, with the official signing of Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers, you can pretty much bank on Kirby Joseph getting a couple of picks in Week 16 now.
That Pittsburgh game's going to be a little bit more exciting for Lions fans now, won't it?
In Detroit, too.
I like it, yeah. Coach, what do you think? Anything on Aaron Rodgers, anything on Pittsburgh, anything on the Lions before we get out of here?
Just thinking that Joseph might. I think he's going to shoot for 3 in this game on that one, but we'll just as long as we beat him, and then everything else will be great.
Last game I was at, Aaron Rodgers threw an interception to Aiden Hutchinson. I thought that was pretty sweet. Last game I was at with Aaron Rodgers playing. I'm just going to leave it at this. If the Lions do well this year, it's going to be because of all the work they put in. And that's always the case. But I just hope people understand and realize it is going to be more difficult this year. Campbell said it. Next year is always more difficult. But that offensive line is the biggest question mark. They've got a lot of pieces and they've got a lot of potential, but it's going to take a lot of hard work out of those people to get to where it needs to be, players and coaches. And so depending on what they accomplish, if they accomplish great things, know that it took an even greater effort. And so don't take these things for granted. Enjoy the ride, enjoy the fun. But I think it's gonna be a year, and I can't wait for training camp to start. Coach James, thank you so much for being here. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about this show. Check us out on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube, if you want the video version of this. I would love to hear your thoughts and reviews. You can check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.